As a health or life coach, maybe you've heard people talking about a signature coaching package, and perhaps you wonder if you need one in your coaching business too. Well, in today's episode of the Wholehearted Business Show, we're going to explore what a signature coaching package actually is, where people tend to go wrong with these, and whether or not you actually need one in your coaching business. Let's dive in. Hi there, welcome to the Wholehearted Business Show. I'm Laura. I help heart-centered and highly sensitive health and life coaches get more clients, grow their businesses and live the best lives while they do it. And today on the show we're talking all about signature coaching packages, and specifically, do you need one in your coaching business? Before we dive into that, if the whole topic of coaching packages is on your radar right now, maybe you have a coaching package and it's just not selling, you're not attracting clients and you know it needs a bit of a glow up, or perhaps you don't actually have a structured coaching package in your coaching business yet, then please do come along and check out Coaching Packages That Sell. It's a pop-up program over 3 days. We start on Monday the 16th of March. It's £33, or the first 60 people will get in for free, so please don't delay because those places are going really, really fast. So come and jump in. It's going to be amazing. There's going to be a private podcast feed, some mini video lessons and a small workbook, and together it's going to help you really tune your coaching package so that it is the star of your business. People really want to be in it. People want to invest in it. It's so much easier to sell, all of that good stuff. So do check out the link in the description and grab your place now. So what is a signature coaching package? I mean, basically it is a bit of a fancy term that someone along the line has made up, but it does differ from just a basic coaching package. So again, obviously I'm going to talk about this in Coaching Packages That Sell on the 16th of March. But you can have a coaching package that tends to be a certain number of sessions over a certain period of time. And what I would be suggesting, and again, what we're going to work on in this pop-up program, is that it is organised around giving people some kind of transformation. So we're going to dig into that in that program. But making it a signature coaching package is where you add in your own unique approach as a coach that facilitates that transformation. So what that looks like is that you use some kind of methodology, some kind of framework, some kind of laid out journey for people, and you put that into your coaching package and you take people through that. Now, this is where I'm going to reference one of the episodes of the show that I've done before. I've often referenced this episode actually, but this is where we talk about coaching versus mentoring, because when you do get into this, and you get into creating a structure and then, like I say, a methodology, a framework and so on, I do feel like you are moving away from pure coaching, which is not structured. So we're moving much more into the mentoring kind of side of things. And I think it's really important to highlight that because it is a shift in the traditional coaching model that most of us are taught how to coach in. So we need to be aware of that. You create some kind of methodology that underpins your way of working, and it doesn't mean that you have to necessarily stick to that in a very, very specific way when you're working with someone one-to-one, but ultimately that is something that you are using in order to help you sell your coaching package. So that's what a signature coaching package is, basically something that you come up with that is a method, a framework that is based on you and your way of doing things, and you put that into your coaching package. So what are the pros of having a signature coaching package? When you do go for the signature method, and that, like I say, you are creating that methodology, you are creating that framework, it very clearly labels it as yours. And again, unless you are kind of picking up something that is like off the shelf, some people do like, I think it's the white label thing where you can kind of buy someone else's method and plug that into what it is that you do. I would highly suggest not doing that, because I think what makes this really, really work, if you do want to go down that route, is that it's your process and it's your method or framework. So having that in place, it really helps distinguish you from other coaches potentially. It really helps people sometimes get a more tangible understanding of how that transformation is going to happen, which can make it easier to sell. So again, you can be very clear on what that transformation is. You can talk about coaching, but when you put a framework in there, it helps people's brains understand, oh, that actually makes sense. I can see why moving through these steps is going to help me get from where I am now, point A, to where I want to be, point B. So it can really help with that side of it as well. It can also be helpful from a branding point of view, because you can talk about this methodology and framework as part of your overall brand and messaging, and it can actually reinforce your position and things like that. So it can be really effective in that way. And also it's very easy to move something that has been made into a framework or a methodology into a group program format. So once you have that laid out and you know what the steps are and you've tested it with people one-to-one, it also means that when you have developed that methodology or framework, it actually translates into a group setting and actually working with people in a group program really easily as well. So it tends to lend itself to that. So if you have your eyes on wanting to scale your business as well, then having a signature coaching package that then translates into a group program at a later date when you're ready to scale, that can also make a lot of sense. So what do we need to think about if we are developing a signature coaching package? I'm not going to dive into this in too much detail because honestly, I could write a full course or program on this. There's so many different things to think about. But a really big piece of advice is that you need to have worked with people one-to-one enough and have enough of your own lived experience, enough of your own knowledge and training and education and all that kind of stuff to be able to put together something that is actually going to work. And I think it's really important because you need to feel confident about it. Like that is part of the process of you having that self-belief and that self-confidence in that framework and being able to develop it. And it doesn't just happen overnight. It's something that develops over time. So making sure that it's based on something that you have trialed and tested, I think is a really, really important part of the process. So those are some of the pros of having a signature coaching package in your coaching business. But what do people tend to get wrong when they are putting this together? So first and foremost, they will run into creating a signature coaching package and calling it a signature coaching package, but haven't actually tested their method or their framework. So they just kind of pull this out of thin air and it's not really based on anything substantial. They haven't actually worked with a lot of clients one-to-one. They haven't really built the lived experience up yet, and they kind of just feel like they need to have the signature thing for the sake of having a signature thing. I would not rush into this. I think you can still have a really solid coaching package without having to have a very specific methodology around it or framework in it or making it signature in any way. And actually some of the kind of downsides of having that signature approach is that it can appear to take some of the bespokeness out of your one-to-one offering. So do be aware of that. There is a downside potentially to having a signature coaching package. So I would always recommend making sure that you've actually worked with people over enough time to really know what this transformation tends to look like for people, and then start to develop your framework and methodology from that point rather than trying to come up with it and then fit people into it and kind of like test it that way. I think it's better to do a bit of working with people first and then kind of develop that process from that experience, if you like, rather than just coming up with it. Sometimes people get really stuck with this because they just want to get into like naming the framework and coming up with the steps and having cool names for the steps and, you know, knowing that they've put their personal kind of intellectual property into it and all that kind of thing and get hung up in that process and actually forget to really nail the fundamentally important things of having a good solid coaching package that people actually want to invest in. So it can be really easy to kind of try and patch over the holes in a not so great coaching package by coming up with a signature approach. You're just not addressing the things that happened underneath. And again, if that sounds like it might be you, then do check out the coaching packages that Cellevent, because that is going to help you make sure that you've got all the things in place, you know, underneath whatever signature approach you put on top, to make sure that your coaching package is actually going to sell and the people actually want it. Sometimes people come up with a signature framework or a method but don't actually explain like why they're doing it in that way. So they kind of talk about it and it sounds nice, but people just don't resonate with it because they don't really understand the why behind the steps that they're going to have to take or the steps that you're suggesting that they take. So we really want to be explaining that and making sure that it makes sense. And sometimes as well, people get carried away with like the names, having to give it some kind of unique, unusual, stand out to sell kind of name, but then it just kind of misses the point of people actually getting it because they need to get it, you know, and sometimes simple is best. So it can be really easy to kind of want to do the signature approach but then miss the mark because there's so much more in that process that gets missed. So we want to make sure that we don't miss out those foundational things and actually get a solid coaching package right first and then build our method on top. But like I said before, there's lots and lots of pros of actually having some kind of signature approach. I mean, my signature method and my signature framework is what I teach in Wholehearted Business, which is the 6 key areas of building a coaching business. I'm going to talk about this next week. So I'm going to go through those 6 key areas that I cover in my work and why I cover them and why we do it in a certain order and all of that kind of thing. So you can see an example of what this looks like in someone else's business next week if you tune in then. So we want to really think about what all of this is in place, because we don't have that, we're going to get stuck. And again, creating this signature approach is not going to fix your coaching package if you are missing the fundamental things, like if people aren't resonating with you, your message, and this is just like your overall business as a whole. If they're not kind of really connecting with you, if they don't trust you, if you have a lot of self-doubt underneath about this, all of those kind of things are not going to be fixed by coming up with a fancy framework. So we want to work on those things first and then let the framework develop out of that. For example, I had worked kind of in the business coach and business mentoring space for several years before my kind of framework really developed. And it's still something that I kind of come back to and tweak and think more about as we go through time. It's something that isn't just one and done. It's developing all of the time. And I do use that. I kind of plug in my one-to-one people with that as well, but in a much more bespoke way than I do inside Wholehearted Business, obviously, because it's slightly different. Although we do a lot of one-to-one stuff in Wholehearted Business as well, to be fair. So, you can use this in lots of different ways, lots of different parts of your business, really. And I think that developing that framework is such a fun thing to do and such a fun thing to work on if you're quite creative minded, if you're quite multi-passionate, because even if it's not something that you actually outwardly share, it kind of helps it sit in for you. It really helps sink in, and for you to kind of get that clarity about the way that you work and the way that you tackle, the transformation or the specific kind of set of challenges or problems that your clients tend to present with, and how you are going to help them get to that end point. And even if you develop that just for yourself and don't necessarily talk about it a lot until you've tested it, that can give you a lot of confidence in your work, actually. So there's lots of real benefits to work in this way, but we want to get the foundations in place first. So as I said at the start, if this sounds like you, and if you want to get those foundations of a really solid coaching package that sells, you want to check out this event that I'm running next week, please come along. It's going to be so good. I always say this about my things because I never run things that I don't think are awesome. So do come along. It's going to be dead accessible. Everything's meant to be very actionable. I think that with these kind of events and these kind of programs, and it is a mini pop-up program, it is not just like fluff. You are actually getting like teaching. It is like a mini course, really, and I will be selling it in the future. So do come and get on, and I'm selling it now because, again, if you don't get one of those 60 first spots, they will go, and they are going extremely fast. So it might be that when you jump on there, it's £33. It is still completely worth that, by the way. Please do come along because it's going to be excellent. But yes, that is going to help you put those foundational things in place, and we are going to touch on some of the signature coaching package conversation in some of those lessons. So come along. There's going to be some advanced lessons as well. So basically each day you're going to get 3 kind of core things to think about, to action, and then there's an advanced thing that you can look at as well if you already have a coaching package, if you have been in business a little bit longer, if you just want to look at what the next kind of step would be, then that is going to be there as well. And like I say, it's going to be brilliant. And then we also have like a big training that you can come along to as well that I'm going to run on the Wednesday, and that's going to be live too. So lots of things to get stuck into next week, so please do come along. If you have any questions, just let me know. You can either put a comment in if you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening on the podcast, pop me a DM on Instagram. I'm at Wholeheartedly Laura. And as always, I'd love to know if this has been helpful. I'd love to know if you're considering having a signature coaching program. If you already have a signature coaching program, let me know in the comments on YouTube, and again, pop me a message on Instagram if you listen on the podcast. But I'll be back next week, and I'll be explaining what my signature program looks like, what my signature system, methodology framework looks like, so you can see an example of what this looks like in someone else's business, and hopefully that will give you lots of ideas for your own too. I will catch you then, guys. Take care. Bye.